Okay. Thank you very much for your patience, President Bradshaw. This is certainly the kind of dialogue that I'd like to actually encourage with our board, so please pardon us for being a little bit behind schedule.
No need to apologize. We enjoyed the dialogue.
Welcome, Florida Gulf Coast University. We're so happy to have you. If you would, President Bradshaw, take a second to introduce who you have with you there at the table and proceed with your presentation.
I would be pleased to, Madam Chair, Governors, Chancellor Brogan, and colleagues. I'd like to introduce the people who will be participating in this presentation this morning. On my right is Ron Toll. Ron Toll is a Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at FGCU. To my immediate left is a member of our Board of Trustees, Mr. Doug St. Cerny, and to his left is our Vice President for Finance and Administrative Services, Dr. Joe Shepard. And we would like to begin our presentation, if we may, with comments from our member of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Doug St. Cerny.
Thank you, President Bradshaw. Good morning, and good morning to you, Madam Chair and Governors. I am Doug St. Cerny, a member of the Florida Gulf Coast University Board of Trustees since 2008, and I am currently serving as the Chair of the Administration and Finance Committee for the Board of Trustees. I'm pleased to be able to participate in this retreat today and would like to offer some very brief introductory remarks. Like my colleague Charlie Edwards, Governor Edwards, it has been my privilege to be a part of FGCU from its beginnings. Having served as a sole liaison to the university representing the Lee County Board of County Commissioners from the time of the university's establishment in 1991 until I completed my service on the County Commission. Florida Gulf Coast University's growth story is truly remarkable, and it has just completed only its 12th year of operation. We always knew that the Florida Gulf Coast University was vitally needed to provide access to public higher education to a rapidly growing region of the state. But we never could have imagined the tremendous strides accomplished through this foresight of government leaders and incredibly supportive community and professional dedication to all who have labored for FGCU. In 12 short years, Florida Gulf Coast University implemented 85 academic programs. This fall will enroll 12,000 students. Now has over 11,000 alumni. Opened more than 75 new buildings. Employs 1,000 regular faculty and staff, has an economic impact of over $350 million annually to the state and to the region, produces $15 million annually in sponsored program awards, has steadily diversified the student body. It has contributed hundreds of thousands of student service learning hours to the communities in the surrounding areas. And I could go on, but I think you get a sense of how much pride we all have and share in the institution and how we have all contributed to its success. The Board of Trustees, working with the university leadership, has been engaged in development of an updated strategic plan to guide Florida Gulf Coast University's further growth. The strategic vision we share for Florida Gulf Coast University and its place in the state university system is something we believe in, is appropriate to our region, is achievable, and well aligned with the strategic goals of the Board of Governors. This time I would like to stop here and allow President Bradshaw to share our vision for Florida Gulf Coast University with you. Thank you again for giving me an opportunity to be here with you. And Brad, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Trustee St. Cerny. And once again, good morning to the members of the Board of Governors, Madam Chair, Chancellor Brogan. Let me briefly refresh your memories about Florida Gulf Coast University. FGCU is the 10th and the youngest university in the SUS, located in southwest Florida on 760 acres, much of which is environmentally sensitive. FGU is a Carnegie Classification Master's large institution. That means we offer many degrees to the master's level and a few at the postmaster's level, but we are not a research-intensive university. Our focus is on teaching and learning. To that end, we have worked diligently to build our program inventory base, which now includes 52 programs leading to the bachelor's degree, 31 to the master's, 1 postmaster's specialist degree, and 1 professional doctorate. And we are hopeful that at the September board meeting that this board will consider approval of our EDD degree program, which has been vetted by the Committee on Academic Affairs. We have built up our full-time faculty to number just over 400, and they provide direct quality instruction for approximately 80% of course sections offered, with a student-faculty ratio of 18:1. And we have earned 12 professional accreditations. We anticipate that our UA Whitaker School of Engineering to be accredited by ABET later this year. We are the fastest growing university in the system along many dimensions. In terms of enrollment, we will welcome nearly 12,000 students this fall, and this student body is ever becoming more diverse. Our strengths are found in the success of our students. Florida Education Training Placement Information Program data consistently show FGCU with one of the highest post-graduation employment rates within the SUS. I've already mentioned our focus on teaching and learning, and this seems to be paying off. We have done this through sustainable growth. Our faculty and staff have become increasingly productive, and through that, we have achieved efficiencies. Indeed, we have the best classroom utilization within the SUS, as reported by the Office of Program Policy Analysis and Government Accountability. Our average class size now closely approximates the SUS average, and our expenditures per student credit hour are now slightly below the SUS average. We are also highly efficient in our use of energy, with the largest single solar array on any single campus in the country, supplying 2 megawatts of roughly 20% of FGCU's electricity. So where do we need to improve? Our facility growth needs to keep pace with our enrollment growth. Otherwise, we encounter space bottlenecks. We need to improve our visibility. We have good statistics, but we are so young, few outside the state know about us. We need to expand our program mix. There are still many programs that a fully comprehensive university offers that we do not. This affects our graduation rate, which we would like to see improve. But until our range of programs is enhanced, better students will look elsewhere in the system or will be tempted to transfer out. Currently, as I have noted, FGCU is considered a comprehensive public university. But we note that our growth is not yet complete. We have seen in the past decade growth from about 3,700 students to over 10,000 students. We added scores of programs and facilities to support that growth. Yet we lag our aspirational peers as a fully comprehensive public university. Consequently, our vision for the next 5 to 10 years is to become the only fully comprehensive public university serving between 1.5 million and 2 million people in Southwest Florida. In order to do this, we will focus on 3 main themes: strategic growth, academic excellence, and economic diversification. Let me provide you a statistical profile of what FGCU looks like now and what it might look like in 10 years. First, our range of programs needs to continue its expansion. We need to add about 3 programs per year over the next decade to create a program inventory that offers the same range of possibilities to our students as that of our aspirational peers. This includes the offering of a few key professional doctorates in fields like physical therapy, education, and nursing, and perhaps a research doctorate in a STEM area where we are developing a critical mass of faculty and research to support such a program. Second, we need to continue the growth of enrollment. A near doubling of our enrollment is projected before our campus reaches its capacity. Our successful residential life program will be expanded as new residence halls come online, so that eventually about 25% of our student enrollment will be housed on campus. Currently, we're expanding our student union and adding another residence hall to bring our resident student population to over 3,000. We're also exploring the potential acquisition of an apartment complex, college club, nearby to the campus that could add another 500 beds and save the university approximately $15 million in new construction costs. Through opportunities like this, we're establishing a vibrant campus life for students to enhance their learning both in and outside the classroom. Growth also implies further increases in the number of faculty and support staff. Faculty growth will not only occur in response to new program development, but also to add depth in existing programs. Staff, who are very and sometimes equally important to the success of our students and to the institution, will continue to grow, but at a rate approximately half that of our faculty growth. Third, our degree production must also double to support the growth and population of the region and the state as a whole. Finally, we will increase the number of proposals for research contracts and the amount of grant support generated by our faculty in key areas of strength. However, I emphasize our growth is intended to be strategic in nature. Our growth will be fueled by an increasing revenue base, but it will not be allowed to outpace that revenue base. We will build our visibility through academic quality. The number of academic programs earning professional accreditation will continue to increase. The institution's graduation rates will also improve. We will maintain a low student-to-faculty ratio, and we will continue to emphasize instruction that is overwhelmingly delivered by full-time faculty. While FGCU clearly has made significant contributions to Southwest Florida and the state more widely during the last decade, we see expanded promise for FGCU to make even greater contributions in the coming years to the SUS goals and to the goals of New Florida. Degree production will continue to grow at the fastest rate within the SUS over the next decade, and STEM areas will be targeted for growth. In the fall, we'll enroll our first students in our Masters of Science in Mathematics program. We'll offer a baccalaureate in software engineering in another year, and a master's in engineering shortly thereafter. Eventually, we hope to offer a research doctorate in the area of marine and environmental science, where we can leverage our strengths in environmental science, environmental engineering, oceanography, and biotechnology. We will also contribute to New Florida in the area of research, economic development, and commercialization over the next decade. We'll be the anchor public institution in the proposed iHub Research Park nearby the university. This 240-acre research park will be focused upon the incubation of businesses working on bringing green technologies to the market and has the potential to generate hundreds of well-paying jobs for the region. Although our request for facility funding was recently vetoed by Governor Criss, we strongly believe in this initiative and will continue our efforts in support of its success. We will also pursue public-private partnerships with companies that have the ability to diversify Southwest Florida's economy. Currently, FGCU is working with Algenol, a biofuels company located in South Lee County, to ensure the company and the university are engaged together to increase jobs in this area. FGCU will also work with Jackson Labs, a leader in genetic research, as it pursues its move to Collier County. Both companies bring hundreds of high-paying jobs to the region in the area of bioscience. In addition, the majority of FGCU students are enrolled in professional programs that are vital to the major economic sectors of the region, including healthcare, education, financial services, and tourism. This focus helps to explain the high percentage among FGCU students of post-graduation employment in Florida. FGCU will strive to continue to demonstrate top quartile performance among SUS institutions during the next decade on this Florida Education and Training Placement Information Program measure. Finally, we will continue to build strength in research focused upon the environment, marine sciences, and biotechnology. This coming year, we will complete our search for the holder of the Bakke Chair in Renewable Energy. To provide a little more detail about what I have just spoken, I will turn the presentation over to my colleague, FGCU's Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Ron Toll.
Thank you. Let me draw your attention to specific aspects of our work plan. What does strategic growth mean to us in practice at FGCU? First, we anticipate enrolling nearly 12,000 students this fall. To accommodate this growth, we will add 21 new faculty. This number includes the 10 that we specifically cited in our tuition differential proposal, and many of these hires are in the STEM areas such as mathematics, chemistry, physics, and biology, or areas that meet critical needs such as the health professions. In part, we hire faculty according to an algorithm that we developed that is tied to enrollment growth and considers such factors as average class size, the mix of graduate to undergraduate students, and the percentage of course sections to be taught by regular full-time faculty. This allows us to plan with academic quality indicators as a part of the model. We also make hiring decisions based upon the results of accreditation reviews and cyclic program reviews. Some of the new programs that we plan to offer over the next few years are highly popular and possess a clear occupational focus. For example, the BS in software engineering, the BA in graphic design, a BA in music education, and a BA in journalism with an emphasis in modern media. At the graduate level, our programs have a pronounced advanced professional orientation and include the Master of Science in Mathematics to start this fall, a Master in Engineering, the Doctorate of Education mentioned by President Bradshaw, and a Doctor of Nursing Practice that we look forward to bringing to you in about a year. So what metrics will we use to determine if we're on the right track with our work plan? We will continue to monitor metrics that consider the number of new facilities brought online, students enrolled, the number of new faculty hired, the number of new programs introduced, and the increases in degree production across all key dimensions defined by the Board of Governors. We also use professional accreditation as a means of assessing the quality of our programs. As I mentioned, we have 12 programs currently accredited, and we are focused on 3 others in the next few years. And I would mention that the Lutgert School of Business reached AACSB accreditation in the fastest period ever for the 600 schools that hold that gold standard, which is AACSB accreditation. The additional programs that we look to see accredited include engineering, where we expect to receive initial ABET accreditation this fall, music, National Association of Schools of Music, which we expect that will occur in 2011, and NCATE for education, which should occur in 2012. Also, we intend to improve student retention and boost our graduation rates. This will come about through expanding academic support to an increasing number of students and by increasing the range of programs offered that will help to lower our transfer out rate. We also intend to expand our honors program to attract and retain more high-achieving students, and we recently hired a full-time honors director to oversee this growth, and of course we will provide more scholarship aid. We also expect R&D activity to expand in line with the growth of our faculty and laboratory capacity, and we'll pay close attention to the percentage of instruction delivered, once again, by our regular full-time faculty, and maintaining an appropriate student-faculty ratio, in addition to carefully controlling average class size. All of these efforts will lead to demonstrable increases in degree production across the board. But key to our success is our enrollment plan. So please allow me to introduce to you FGCU's Vice President for Administrative Services and Finance, Dr. Joe Shepard.
Thank you, Provost Toll. I'm going to be moving to the computer right behind me because these are interactive slides that I'd like to take the board briefly through in deference to time. Thank you. What we have before us is, of course, our enrollment. And one of the questions that this board asked of the universities was whether or not we would have the necessary resources to strategically position ourselves for the growth into our future. As Trustee St. Cerny mentioned, we are currently an institution of 12,000 students, and in the next 10 years, we'll reach the 22,000 to 25,000 student mark. This particular series of 3 graphs, the enrollment graph up on the left-hand corner, the marginal revenues and the tuition, takes a look at those various attributes. We know, for example, that right now our first-time in college students are growing at 10%. And what that means to us is, as I've already mentioned, is that we'll be close to 12,000 students as we look at this upcoming fall. However, we've also positioned ourselves at what happens if that growth does not materialize. Various attributes such as recession and so forth have an impact. If I drop it down, we know what happens over the future. That future changes. Instead of in 6 years, we have 17,000 students, it would then drop down to approximately 15,000 students. We also know that there's a cause and effect on marginal revenue, and that our revenue, in terms of being able to accommodate the necessary growth in terms of hiring new faculty and staff and the additional student life resources, also diminishes down to approximately 7,000 from 7 million down from $8.7 million. We also know what's happening with tuition. More and more of our students are feeling that we're moving from a state-supported institution to a state-assisted institution, and I've heard some colleagues joke about a state-located institution as tuition continues to climb. But on the tuition, what is before the board and what was before our Board of Trustees is the issue of tuition differential in terms of adding on to the overall package. Right now in the state of Florida, at least at Florida Gulf Coast University, our students, prior to the current tuition increase, will pay about $4,500 for a 15 credit hour per semester load. That moves up to nearly $5,000. Meanwhile, though, in the nation, that number presently in 2009-10 is at $7,090, and that moves up to $7,445 if you assume a 5% national increase. A difference between current and last year, approximately $2,102. What happens next year, or in the present year, if the appropriations dwindle or we have a holdback? We can understand what that means, again, on marginal impact by simply adjusting our various numbers. But I want to take a couple moments to talk about differential tuition, because that's the impact that we have on our students, and that was one of the issues that this board discussed yesterday. In the differential tuition, as we take a look at it, again before this board, for all the institutions, is the 7% increase. As you'll see over in these particular numbers here, the 7% increase, 30% of that has to go toward need-based financial aid. If approved, what that generates for Florida Gulf Coast University is $782,000 a year. If we assume additional increases in differential tuition over the next 6 years, that provides an additional $8.7 million, at least at our institution, for need-based financial aid. Questions have been asked about need-based financial aid. That deals with, of course, the definition from the federal government, Title IV programs, and it deals with cost of attendance. A student living on our campus has a cost of attendance of approximately $18,000. You take the estimated family contribution, whatever that is from the federal formula, and you subtract the two, and that's what gives you need. All of our need goes toward our institutional grants to be able to help the students afford the cost of tuition. But there's an additional piece to it. Let's assume for a moment that this upcoming year, we decide that in 2010 not to raise the differential tuition. Note the $8.7 million in terms of the aggregate over the year. It will actually decrease by about $1.4 million, even though the current annual amount would decrease only by about $400,000 because there's a compounding effect. But worse yet, at least for a growing institution like us who are trying to serve the needs of our area and provide access to the students, the number of students served drops from 309 additional students that we can serve down to approximately 31 students that we can additionally serve should that not be passed. And as noted, that is primarily because the number of faculty that can be hired drops, in our particular case, from 10 down to one additional faculty member. This can be multiplied throughout the rest of the institutions. I just wanted to simply demonstrate with these various slides what happens in terms of our strategic planning, how we have positioned ourselves with the appropriate revenue, and how we have taken into account the issues centering around our student and staying student-focused. With that, I'd like to turn this back over to President Bradshaw for concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Shepard. Madam Chair, Governors, Chancellor Brogan, and colleagues, what we have presented to you, I hope, is a comprehensive look at the phenomenon that we know in Southwest Florida as Florida Gulf Coast University. I think the vision of those who are responsible for the existence and the evolution of FGCU is one to be admired. I think that what the university means to the region increasingly is an opportunity for access to high-quality, state-supported education, and at an institution that is becoming one of the finest institutions within the state university system, of which we are proud to be a member. Madam Chair, with that, we stand for any questions and comments.
Thank you very much, President Bradshaw. Very interesting and great presentation. Any questions from members of the Board of Governors?
I've got a question. It looks like your growth plans are pretty aggressive. What was the number of students that applied last year or this year versus the number of students in freshman year that you took in?
The number of students who applied this past year were approximately 10,000 students. Of that, approximately 6,000 students were accepted. Of that, we recognize that at our orientations, 2,500 first-time in college students will attend. Our numbers, although they may be aggressive, to give you an example, this past year, our projections from a year and a half ago, this year we're 6 FTE off what we had predicted. So our predictive models are fairly strong. However, we also recognize that the future is, you never know where that's going to go. So we anticipate that and tie that model to the financial model just like a business would.
Good. Thank you.
Governor Duncan?
Yes, one question that maybe it's appropriate for a follow-up committee discussion, but I want to understand the land planning side of your growth and the land that was donated a few months ago, and then I guess there was something in the clips this week about your new University Village zoning issues and some growth of there, and I'm having a hard time visualizing where everything is and what you intend for the various pieces of property that you own.
Governor Duncan, I'll begin to answer that question, and I'll ask Joe to fill in some of the specifics. I mentioned we're on 760 acres, our current campus footprint. Of that 760 acres, only about 340 acres are available to build on. And so I think that is a key figure to keep in mind about our current campus footprint. The piece of property that you referred to that was donated, actually it was transferred from another state agency to Florida Gulf Coast University. And it came at an opportune time because right now we are revising our facilities master plan, taking into account that piece of property as well as other potential pieces of property that we may acquire either through purchase or through donations within the near future. So I think our current campus is about 60 to 65% built out. And if we're talking about accommodating students, a student enrollment of about 20 to 22,000 students, we're going to have to be prudent in recognizing opportunities to expand our campus by acquiring available properties when appropriate that are adjacent to our campus. Many of the lands that surround our campus, and even really actually much of what's on our campus, they are protected lands, and we embrace that. Joe?
Thank you. In fact, our projections as we take a look at it, in the next 10 years we'll reach that 22,000 build-out number. And so what will become before this board, as well as our own board of trustees, is the very question of do we and how do we expand Florida Gulf Coast University? Southwest Florida is a very dynamic and growing area. Independent of the economy, I recognize the highest number of foreclosures and so forth, but we expect that trend to change in the next 5 to 10 years and land to become more of a premium. So as we look around us at strategic partnerships and so forth, we try to get land contiguous with us so that we can expand our research capabilities so that when 5 to 10 years come of that growth, we have the resources, land resources, to be able to accommodate any board decision that this board makes, whether to expand or to move in a different direction.
I guess, again, and please don't, my comment was not suggesting that you shouldn't be growing or planning. It was really trying to understand what you envisioned happening, kind of where, and the innovation, village and the community. Is that on the campus? Is that adjacent land? And then kind of where's the other land that was donated relative to the campus? I was just trying to more understand that piece of it than questioning the need for it.
Sure, Governor Duncan. The Innovation Hub, the iHub, is located about 5 minutes from our main campus. What we're calling the Buckingham property, and we'll have to rename that, that's about 25 to 30 minutes away from our main campus. And it's a fairly large parcel of property with usable existing buildings on it. The 40 acres that you read about, that acreage is really contiguous with our current main campus. And right now we have not designated a particular use for it, but we do know that it will be an opportunity for us to expand our educational and research efforts.
Thank you.
Governor Colson.
I was interested with the interactive slide presentation. That was very cool. The financial aid component of this gives me some concern, and we talked about this some yesterday. I don't believe that the 30% that you are limited to just giving those to people who are Pell Grant eligible. I believe that the statute gives you the discretion to spread that out further than that. And so I'm not sure we don't need a workshop as a board, or we need to, but I need to better understand financial aid in the state and what we're doing to protect the families in the state from these increasing tuitions, which I understand we need, the institutions need. But I don't know if that 30% that we is enough. And so that's where I have concern going forward, because when you look at these numbers and how it impacts a family 5 years from now, 6 years from now, it becomes pretty significant. And I don't think any of us want to be in a situation where we're asking people to graduate with $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 worth of debt. So, Madam Chair, I just need to understand this better.
Governor, the reason Joe and I are grinning at each other is we had this conversation yesterday evening after we closed about the obvious need, because this will be a recurring theme for all universities. Cost of higher ed as it relates to financial aid in higher ed, and putting together a workshop so that everybody can work to better understand and also plan for where we go from here. Everybody always believes we mean need. I mean, it's an automatic. You go to anybody, they'll see. Everybody needs more needs-based financial assistance. Nobody argues with that, but the question is so much bigger and, as you point out, so much more complex than that. Who's eligible for it? Where does it go? Who does it help first? Is it done on a triage basis where you take the economic bleeders first, and if there's any left over, others get it? So it really is something I think begs for a greater discussion.
Chancellor, I wanted to also add to that workshop a little background on the junior colleges, which are now colleges and accepting four-year programs, because we keep hearing from so far everyone who has presented that we're concerned with the students in the area. Everything is with the area. And there are other facilities as a state system where young people can go and maybe the cost is reduced. I think someone asked prior to one of the other presentations, why is one unit so much more expensive for a student than another? Well, it's probably because of the program in that unit. If they have labs there, it's obviously going to be costing more money than if you're just giving a lecture to 25 students and then meeting with them afterwards. So in addition, I'd like to have an analysis of what the state system's expenses and costs and so forth are of all the areas, not just our few universities and their satellite campuses, but those other four-year colleges that we are sort of responsible in an indirect way or direct way for. I think that's important too.
Governor Edwards.
President Bradshaw, FGCU does one thing, and it has from the very beginning, that most of our universities do not. And as it relates to the planning, could you explain a little bit about the public service requirement for all of the students at Florida Gulf Coast, and how that what the effect has been on campus, and should that be something we should consider for our other universities?
Thank you, Governor Edwards, for that question. You know, increasingly, as you look at higher education throughout the United States, service learning and what now has evolved into civic engagement is becoming a part of the curriculum for those institutions. For Florida Gulf Coast University, it has been always a part of our core. It's not adjunctive to what our students are expected to do. It is integrated into the regular curriculum. And our students are required to perform 80 hours of prior approved service learning civic engagement. And we also have a required seminar called the colloquium, which is designed to have students understand more about the dynamics of the world and the environment in which they live. And I just point out again, it's not something adjunctive or that students can opt to take. It is part of the undergraduate curriculum and the undergraduate experience at Florida Gulf Coast University. So thank you for that question. Appreciate it. And Provost would like to add something to that.
Thank you for that question. I'd just like to add that many of the faculty that we attract to Florida Gulf Coast University are in part attracted because of the strong connection to service learning. That service learning can be embedded in their classes in a variety of ways. Also, because of our strong teaching and learning mission, we invest substantially in the scholarship of teaching as one of the ways that faculty members can demonstrate their expertise. So pedagogical development and pedagogical scholarship is very important, and I believe that FGCU is at the leading edge in terms of looking at how service learning fits into that scholarship of teaching and pedagogical advancement model. And it's very nice for us to see faculty coming to us at on-campus interviews saying, that was something that attracted us because that's part of what we want our professional wherewithal and esprit de corps, if you will, to spread over.
You know, for us, it's not just about counting hours. It's the quality of the service learning civic engagement experience.
Governor Marshall?
President Bradshaw, both you and Vice President Toll mentioned average class size in your presentations. I think it's generally acknowledged that there's a relationship between quality of instruction and class size. And and not only at your university, but at all of our universities, in the face of growing student enrollments and limitations on the growth of faculty, don't we need to concern ourselves with this matter of class size? What do your numbers show? You mentioned, apparently you've done some research. I'd be curious to know what your numbers show and what your thoughts are about planning this rapid growth, dealing with the class size problem as you grow.
Sure. Our current average class size is about 32, 33. And the provost alluded to a model, and I'll turn it over to him to explain more about the model that we've developed on if a certain class size is what we want to maintain. We understand from our model how many faculty members it takes to maintain that class size. There's a lot of debate, Governor Marshall, on class size and what it really means in the quality of instruction. But we recognize at some point classes can be too large to achieve the kind of educational quality that we're trying to achieve in the classroom. We know how to model that. We know how to project our enrollments and how many faculty and staff are needed to support that. And so for FGCU, if 35, for instance, or for example, is a targeted average class size, we know the resources that we need to maintain that class size. Ron?
Thank you. And to add to that, Governor Marshall, we obviously talk about average, and I'm going to use the term here, section size, which is just slightly more accurate as we apply that term on campus. We know that there are some sections that need to be smaller in terms of some classes. So some of the writing classes are maintained at a much smaller cap. We have also done things to increase efficiency, particularly in some of the laboratory experiences. We have designed and built de novo laboratories, particularly in biology and chemistry, where we are having about 72 students, but instead of just an individual faculty member in there, we may have a faculty member, some form of teaching assistant, and perhaps a second faculty member who will be there for part of that class. It's interesting because some of the faculty members have reported that they enjoy that experience more because there's a greater interactivity at the moment. Some of the students have reported, and I think we'll find this in many classes of different size, that they may have a question they wish to ask, but they're a little concerned about asking that question, and they'd rather have someone who was a little bit closer to them, perhaps in age and status, if you will, to be able to ask that question, and maybe that question will then cause that question to be asked across the entire classroom. So those things take advanced planning. And so when we look at that overall size of about 33 or so, that's the mass average for the university. What we are doing now is delving into each of the different disciplines to understand where the sweet spot is, so to speak, in terms of averages within health sciences, which in some cases must be lower because of the clinical practitioner component of it. Other areas where we can use blended courses to mix some multimedia things along with face-to-face instruction. And I'm very proud of our university for advancing all these different models, again as a reflection of the scholarship of pedagogy, to try to be as efficient as we can be and maintain quality as the very foremost thing that we do. We delayed the onset of the addition of some degree programs, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, because of things that would have affected quality. So for instance, the EDD that you and your committee led a discussion over, we originally brought that in 2007. We were asked to back burner that a little bit because of the environment at the time. We did. We had no problem with doing that because we understood the wisdom of the Board of Governors. We're back at you now because it makes sense, very good sense at this time.
Madam Chair, I think it just ought to be said that we all should acknowledge and appreciate their serious attention to this matter.
Thank you so much, Governor Marshall.
And I just to underscore this, Madam Chair, if I may, class size is an important issue, but small classes or class size of any dimension should not ever be a proxy for quality instruction. And I think our intent, as I'm sure of all the state universities, is to have quality, effective instruction in the classroom, whether it's a class of 10 or 12 or 30 or 40.
Governor Franklin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We talk about differential tuition. We talk about lowering faculty-teacher ratios and class sizes. I was wondering the relationship between differential tuition and then also the 2% increase in your faculty as well as the $1,000 bonuses.
Well, I think that we're able to provide appropriate salary increases to our faculty and staff because of two things: the appropriation that we got that wasn't cut significantly, and as well as the projected revenue that comes from tuition and fees. It seems to me there's no better way to expend revenues that we have available than in rewarding those who make the institution and therefore the students or contribute to their success, and making sure that we're able to retain and recruit more high-quality faculty and staff to enhance the success that we're projecting in years 2, 3, 4 down the line. So would we be able to provide the $1,000 bonus and the 2%, which will kick in January, not July? Just want to point that out. But we'll be able to provide that without the tuition increase and the appropriation that we got, or the level of appropriation that we got from the legislature? The answer to that is no, which is why we didn't provide it last year, even though we got a differential tuition.
And then my last question was, I know Florida Gulf Coast University is extremely innovative in reference to sustainability and saving a lot of dollars when it comes to electricity use. And I see the solar panels right here, and so I wanted you also to go into some of the projects and programs that you guys instituted to pretty much save with having to expend your revenues on electricity and all your sustainability efforts.
Sure, I'd be pleased to do that. Just as we had mentioned before about service learning and civic engagement being core to the academic experience of students attending FGCU, so is environmental sustainability. And you can see that in our academic programs, in our baccalaureate and master's degree programs in environmental science, environmental studies, as well as one of our first engineering degree programs in environmental engineering. You can see it in the way that we build buildings. We recently received LEED certification, the first LEED certification for our residence hall, Everglades Hall. I have committed to the university that all of our academic buildings going forward will be built to LEED standard, and we will be seeking LEED certification for them. We have a new building that we have just brought online, Academic 7, and we've applied for LEED certification for that building. and we anticipate gold or platinum for that building. We use solar thermal for hot water in our residence halls, and we're expanding that. Just a funny story, if I may, Madam Chair. After being at FGCU for about 6 or 8 weeks, I was working on the internet, and a pop-up came on my screen about a solar-powered trash compactor. And it took up the same space as a regular trash receptacle on campus, but it had a compactor that was powered by the sun. And I sent Joe Shepard an email saying, Joe, I think this is a great idea. Let's look into it. And Joe wrote me back that afternoon and said, Mr. President, I make them call me that at the university. He said, Mr. President, we already have 8 of those. And it underscored for me that even the people who work at the university, they understand our core values, and we now have about 13 of those. The folks in physical plant mounted a campaign that distributed reusable water bottles that says, Eagles love tap water. All of our water fountains now have a spigot where you can refill your water bottles. By the way, the name of those trash compactors, they're called the Big Bellies. Not an attractive name, but it certainly gets the job done. So environmental sustainability is what we do. When you visit our campus, Madam Chair, you will see that we have very little irrigation. We don't use fertilizer. We are very in tune to being good shepherds of the environment that we find ourselves. So thank you very much, Governor Franklin, for that question.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I just make, I don't want to usurp any of the members, but I just want to make one quick comment, and I don't want any university to take this in any particular way because it's not meant that way. I applaud you for your discipline. I saw this with North Florida's presentation yesterday as well. Obviously, you're not going to look the same by 2020. I would submit none of our universities are going to look identical by 2020 to what they look like today. While your plan is aggressive, I think it's quite disciplined in terms of who you are and what you want to look like by 2020. And I got the impression you don't want to become the University of Florida by 2020. You don't want to become the University of Michigan by 2020.
They certainly
you
are
want
not
to stay
our
within
aspirational institutions. No chance of it.
Well said. But you want to stay within your philosophy. You want to stay within your core mission. You just want to grow and expand within that, and that should be appreciated, because when people want to add things just because they believe it will increase their status in the world of the academy, but that may or may not technically align with their mission, I think that's where we run into problems as a system, and I do applaud you for your discipline in terms of who you are, but also who you aspire to be.
Thank you, Chancellor. We embrace our mission, and we think that our status is enhanced every year that we stay true to that mission. So we appreciate that. We embrace our role in the system, and while we understand that role, as Wayne Gretzky once said, that we continue to skate where the hockey puck is going to be.
I have a question. I know that, and I think it's Edison. I may have the wrong state.
Edison State College.
Yeah. I know that they appear to be pretty aggressive in their expansion process. And my question is, based upon the growth that you've anticipated, have you factored in any impact that you may suffer from the apparent aggressive approach of Edison State College?
We have been, we've nurtured a very good relationship with Ken Walker and Edison State College. And indeed, over the last couple of years or so, we've found the opportunity to support some of the expansion of their degree programs at the baccalaureate level. We are, and we applaud the three systems, if you will, the SUS, the State College System, and the Florida Board of Education, getting together to really more comprehensively and thoughtfully approach a plan for higher education. We are concerned about the growth of baccalaureate degree programs, as you are, especially as it relates to unnecessary duplication. But again, in our region, we have a good working relationship with Edison State College. I think it can be improved in terms of comprehensive program planning and implementation, and we look forward to the three systems, if you will, working together to do that plan.
So at this point, President Bradshaw, based upon the decisions, I guess the 4-year degree production decisions made by Edison, are they offering different degrees from what we have at FGCU, or are they offering the same degrees?
I would say most of them are different degrees. Okay. And it's not just about degrees either, Madam Chair. It's also about the type of educational experience that students that we recruit are looking for. I don't believe, and this is not to in any way diminish the role of Edison State College, because they have a great role to play in the higher ed environment in Southwest Florida. But we don't think very often that students are sitting in their living rooms with their parents or guardians mulling over whether it's FGCU or Edison State College. We have a different type of educational experience. It's a residential experience. It's an experience that's comprehensive, that includes clubs, organizations, Division I athletics. So I think that the educational product, if you will, that we have put together, certainly there will be some competition with Edison State, but our focus, and I've said this to the university community, if we stay laser focused on our vision and mission, we will continue to be successful. But I think for the state of Florida and the taxpayers of the state of Florida, comprehensive planning for higher education is needed.
Governor Beard?
One last question from me. How much of your growth can you accommodate in your existing facilities?
I know that right now on our current site we can accommodate 20 to 22,000 students. So I believe, Joe, some of that will involve some of our, I say, older buildings. We have buildings that are maybe 10, 12 years old that are two-story buildings. If you come on campus, you can really see the newer buildings. You can tell by how high they are from the older buildings. And so I anticipate that some of the earlier buildings will be torn down, and we have the capacity to go up. And we certainly have the capacity to accommodate about 5,000 students living on campus, and that stays within that 25% critical number of students. We believe you need to have a learning community.
Governor Edwards?
This is more of a comment that you might like to comment on, President Bradshaw. Talking about the relationships between our state universities and the state colleges, this board might recall several years ago the then management team at Florida Gulf Coast was about to present to us a plan for 1,000 acres in Charlotte County and $75 million in buildings and you name it. Fortunately, that did not materialize. President Bradshaw and President Walker got together, discovered that Edison State College had an existing facility, a very nice facility in Charlotte County that was underutilized. Brad, you want to take that story from there? This is how we can work with state colleges, is my point.
Actually, President Walker and I had a long discussion a couple years ago, right after I arrived, on how we could work together in Charlotte County to offer more degree completion programs at the Edison site, which at the time was somewhat underutilized. And we still offer 4-credit courses on the Charlotte site of Edison State College. We have no plans to develop branch campuses at this point. Oftentimes, President Ginshaft, I am reminded of the branch campuses of USF, and folks all over my region, they want to know, well, why can't we do this like USF? And I point out to them, when USF was 12 or 13 years old, they were focused on developing a main campus, and that's our focus as well. So we've been able to work with Edison State College, especially in Charlotte County, in bringing 4-credit courses. We actually have some faculty and staff housed on the Edison State campus. So any of our satellite operations now deal almost exclusively with continuing education through our Renaissance Academy.
I'm sorry, Brad.
Please.
I was just going to say, Madam Chair, that is exactly why I think it is so important that this board not only understand each university's model, but embrace and support it, not only in terms of what it is, But I talked about that discipline, and it is easy to fall prey to the song of the sirens, and that is where somebody offers you 300 acres to do something on, or a community says, we want a sign that says your university in our township, or constituents who say, hey, instead of having to drive 30 miles to get to campus, we'd like to have those programs here. None of those are bad things, but it just becomes very difficult unless we all understand and support the model that is being offered, not to fall prey to that. And suddenly you find yourself growing in a way that's disorganized and perhaps worse, doesn't have the resources to appropriately support what it is that you're doing. And that's why I applaud the disciplined approach.
We actually had a plan of even expanding in Charlotte County. Governor Edwards and Chancellor, you all may recall, some of the governors may recall, that required additional funding. And we presented what I think was a very good plan, but it was at the bad time. So we were not able to expand what we did in Charlotte County, but we have not backed away from Edison State Charlotte as a vehicle for offering more for-credit degree completion programs where they don't have programs, both at the baccalaureate and in some cases professional master's degree programs.
Any other questions? With that, thank you very much, President Bradshaw.
Thank you.
I'm now going to ask if Florida International University will go ahead and come up to the front table.